What's up, guys? I want to thank Hellfreezer for collaborating with me. I'm being featured on his channel as well, so head over to his page and subscribe if you haven't already. I also want to warn you guys that one of these videos contains sexual abuse, which I know is a trigger and could really disturb some of you. So if this applies to you, stop when Hellfreezer's bit is over. Have a good night. Peace. This happened a couple months ago, and I have since moved to the opposite end of the country. I'm 14 currently, so I was 13 when this happened. I have a room with a small TV that's in the middle of the house. We lived in a nice neighborhood, so this was unexpected. I hadn't encountered anyone before returning home to go to bed. It was around 11:30 p.m., so it was very late. I went to bed with my Bella, which is our German Shepherd. She's only one and has a lot of energy. Anyway, I get my pajamas on and go to bed. My bed faces my closet, which I've been scared of since I saw that movie Insidious. I've closed my closet every night after watching it. When I was going to bed, Bella was sort of looking at the door with her ears perked up, but not growling, just observing. This creeped the fuck out of me, and I just wanted to fall asleep. Anyway, I go to sleep, and later I wake up to Bella growling at my closet. I'm starting to get chills down my spine, and I want to scream, but I don't. My closet has a push-in door, so anyone could open it. Bella's growling turned into a full bark, as I can see a half a face looking at me. I sent out the most blood-curdling scream a boy could let out. Bella lunges on him while I hear my dad charging across the floor to my room. My dad busts down the door with his hunting shotgun. Note, my dad's a big guy and is well known in combat training. Bella is still latched onto his arm. She's very obedient, even at her young age. Dad tells her to let go. He grabs the stalker by the neck and drags him outside with my toy handcuffs in his hand. I follow him and hear the screams of my family as he's being dragged out. Dad wrestles him down and has him pinned. I handcuff him and my mom calls the police. After 10 minutes of constant fuck yous from the stalker, the police arrive, putting him in proper handcuffs. But as he's getting in the car, he gives me a look of pure insanity, that kind that makes your soul cry. I have gone to therapy and I've moved far away. So creepy closet stalker guy, fuck you and let's never meet again.
When I was little, I lived in a cul-de-sac that had a park behind one of the rows of houses, where all the kids from our street would go and play. We'd get up to all sorts and just be kids. And since we all lived on the street, with our home so close, we would stay out till dark, with our parents being okay with it since everyone knew each other, and they knew where we would be. Bear in mind, there are no lights on this park, and the only light came from the windows of the houses that bordered the park and its field, it being almost pitch black on some occasions. Normally, with it being that dark, we'd all get scared and dare each other to run down. To which, none of us ever did alone. I don't know what it was that brought our attention to the man in the upstairs window of the house in the middle of all the others, but he'd been there a while. With it being dark, we could only see a silhouette. Some of the older kids tried to spook the younger ones, and I must admit it worked. We called it a night, and knew we'd be seeing each other the next day. The next night rolls around, and I think to who lives in the house. And I can only think of the mother, father, and adult son that lived there. To be frank, the mother wasn't a very nice woman. I recall her calling me names, I was around 8 at the time, for sitting on the pavement outside of my house on one occasion. I was just thoroughly frightened by her. The father was reserved, but just as scary, and so was the son. I thought that it must have been one of them in the window the other night. I was wrong. It was early on the next evening, and with it being summer, it was still a little bit bright out, around 7 to 8, and this guy was in the window again. But this time, he was shouting at us at the park. So feeling a little braver with it being light out, we decided to get closer to the back garden fences that lined the field by the park. I hadn't seen this man before. Never had I seen him leave or enter the house. He wasn't as old as the father, so he must have been the other son. He continued to shout abuse that some of the kids found funny. I really didn't, since this family lived across the road from me. In my little child brain, this guy was going to break into my house whilst I was in bed at night and kill me. So another night passes, and then a couple of weeks. It's the same routine of him shouting abuse, being generally very strange. I mean, he would try to argue with little kids. This wasn't normal behavior. I began to notice that he would begin to yell at us when his parents weren't home. I'd noticed that their car wasn't on the front when I would head down to the park. And I assume his brother wasn't in either. One day he began throwing things from his window, mainly videotapes and their cases from what I could tell, being quite close to the fence if I was on the grass. Sometimes he would disappear and reappear with something else to throw. It was a gradual progression with this sort of behavior. He'd wait for us to look up at the window when we would be on the park and start yelling and throwing things again. At first it was amusing in an uncomfortable way. It wasn't as though we'd had experience with this kind of behavior from a grown man. But with it lasting so long, it got to the stage where we'd tell each other not to look. Or we'd see him in the window and we'd just go home, or play in the front, since he never appeared in the front windows of the house. The day that scared me the most was when it was me and two of my friends playing outside on the grassy bit between the garden fences of the houses and the fence of the park. When I saw this guy again, I was already wary of looking at him, but this time he wasn't yelling. He was just hitting his window and trying to get our attention. When he did, I could see him waving a tea towel about, and I thought he was going to throw it at the window. That's when he pulled a knife out from under it. Little kid me was like, shit, he's actually going to kill me. He went on to bring the knife up to his throat and mimic slitting it. I took this as a threat, even as an 8 to 9-year-old. We went home after this. My parents weren't home, but my older brother was. I didn't tell him what happened. But I didn't have to, as sometime later the police came knocking. Apparently the others I was with, they were siblings, had told their mom and she called the police. I was older than the both of them, but they had said this guy in the window was the dad, but I knew for a fact it wasn't. So out of the 3 people who had witnessed this guy with the knife, 2 had different stories already. I doubt the police did anything, as I heard nothing of it ever again. Except, every now and then, a few weeks after the incident, I'd see the front top window's curtain move at night, as though someone was peeping out across at my bedroom. Suffice to say, I was freaked out and avoided that side of the park for a long time. I never did see that man again.
This is from a very dark time in my life that completely changed me. I was 19 and still very childish, just about to find out who I was as an adult, and that's when I met my first boyfriend. He was 30 and very charming. He knew how to work the mind of stupid teenage girls with self-esteem issues. As you might have guessed by now, yes, this soon became an abusive relationship, and when I finally realized that, I was in big trouble. He had worn me down so much that leaving him wasn't even something that seemed logical in my brain. The way I've explained it to people since is this. You are stranded on a deserted island in the middle of an unknown ocean. The island is the shittiest place on Earth, but compared to jumping into the ocean and starting to swim in any random direction is more terrifying than just enduring this horrible place for a little longer. You live on pure survival instinct, and since food is scarce and sleep is awful, you're slowly losing the energy to fight back. All you do is survive until the next day. This is what it's like to be in an abusive relationship. It's not rational, but that's what I like to think. So this happened at some point towards the end of the relationship, I think. One of my then boyfriend's friend came over with her boyfriend, and she had to leave to do something, I don't remember. Her boyfriend was notorious in the youth community of the city I lived in for being well liked by everyone, but also for his absolutely terrible treatment of women. To be honest, most of the people I met during my time with my ex were pretty awful human beings, so I had grown somewhat numb to the massive assholes I met on a weekly basis. We were sitting on the couches in the apartment, me in one, my ex and his friend in the other. The atmosphere was pretty chill, so when the friend suddenly rose from the couch and came over to me, it came right the fuck out of nowhere to me. He just started groping me like it was no big deal. I was in total shock. I only ate very, very little food because my boyfriend didn't want me to get fat, and I'm usually the shortest person I know. So you can imagine how horrifying it is when a man who's not only much taller than you, but also obese as fuck, starts forcing his hands down your shirt. I fought him to keep him away from my breasts, and I'm not sure I succeeded completely. I was so fucking scared. When I looked into his eyes, it was like looking at a shark. He was just gone. The only thing he focused on was getting my clothes off and touching my body. I hate that I'm like this, but when I end up in extreme situations like this, I often start to laugh. I hate that I do that, and the situation was no different. It wasn't a happy laugh. I could feel it on my face that I must have looked scared. I looked at my boyfriend, and he just sat there looking at us, laughing as well. The thing is, my ex-boyfriend is a psychopath. He doesn't understand human emotion on anything other than a technical level. I knew this. I knew him better than anyone in his life because I was the first person to ever live with him and be around him all the time since none of us were working. I knew him, and I knew that he didn't understand that what was happening right now was in no way okay. I also knew that even if he did, he wouldn't give a shit. I knew that if I would tell him later that what happened was against my will, he would blame me for sending him mixed signals. He would blame me for anything. So the fact that I was laughing only made me even more frustrated with myself because he would have had ammo to piss on me later. I knew that I was on my own, and I knew that this was not going to end well for me in any way. If the friend managed to get my clothes off and rape me in front of my ex, no matter what the outcome would be, I would be in trouble with my ex later for putting him through that. Technically, we had an open relationship, since he had more or less forced me to agree with this. Though he had said that I was free to fuck other people other than him, he would constantly tell me that I shouldn't do it because I would feel guilty for hurting him and shit like that. He, on the other hand, fucked other girls and refused to be honest about it. At one point he came home after a weekend away, God knows where, and had me suck him off and have sex with him. I later found out that he had sex with some girl and not showered specifically because it satisfied him to know that I didn't know. I know this because he had did this a lot with other girls he had been with in the past and bragged about it to me at one point. I could imagine that he had told his friend that it was okay to fuck me. I believe that he would be okay with me having sex with men he chose. It was more the idea of me being with someone he didn't know. That annoyed him. So yeah, maybe he was completely okay with what was going on at the moment, but even if he was, he would still use it against me. I don't know if this makes any sense, but I'm just trying to put you in the mindset of this man so that you might understand how shitty it was to be in this situation. His friend almost managed to force my shirt off, and his breathing was rapid. Suddenly, his girlfriend walked through the front door and he immediately stood up and walked back to the couch, as if nothing happened. My boyfriend was looking like he hadn't got a care in the world, and I said nothing because, well, the girlfriend wasn't particularly understanding about shit like this. Later, when the relationship ended, of course, my ex wasn't going to let it end peacefully as I wanted. He made a lot of drama out of nothing, and tried to blackmail me with withholding some of my stuff and writing long ranting emails and insulting texts to my phone. I'm pretty happy that I stayed level-headed throughout it. When his friend found out that we had broken up, he got a hold of my number and tried to flirt with me and invited me out to hang. When I declined, he teamed up with my ex and wrote me insults. A year after I got away, I dealt with trauma, anxiety, depression. Like I said, a lot of horrible shit happened to me during this time. And I started blogging about the things that had happened to me as a form of therapy. I kept all the names anonymous, even though I wanted nothing more than to tell the world who my ex was and what he had done to me and others. My ex caught wind of my blogs and started doxing me and writing long blogs himself about how much of a stalker I was and that I was a psychopathic, lying bitch who wanted to ruin his life. I was no saint during that time, I will admit that, but at least I never doxed him. I didn't get my creepy friend to call him in the middle of the night and breathe heavily into the phone either. Nor have I made a fake profile on the forum where I wrote my blogs and write long messages about how much of a hypocritical slut I was. Okay, friendo, you're taking that rejection I gave you pretty well, I see. But you know, if you really wanted a chance with me, maybe you shouldn't have forced yourself on me back in the day. It's always good to show your attackers that you aren't afraid of them. Laugh at them if possible. If they're anything like my ex and his friend, they'll leave you alone eventually.